Is Monday, October 19th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, those of you watching on GBN TV channels 7, 11 and 20, and good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9. It is a significant day in Grenada's history. October 19th, it is 37 years since the massacre that claimed the lives of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, members of his cabinet, and Grenadians on the fort, as well as activities just after or leading up to and shortly after that day. This morning we are going to be discussing the psychological effect of the Grenada Revolution 37 years later. Joining us this morning is clinical psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo, friend to the show, a usual face here on the platform. Good morning, Dr. Panchoo.
Good morning, Blossom. Good morning to all of our listeners to the Point program this morning.
Thank you so much for joining us and being with us and always accommodating when I have my requests.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. So like I said in the lead up, it is 37 years since the massacre that claimed the life of Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, members of his cabinet and Grenadians, October 19th, 1983. And still almost 40 years later, it's still a hard part of Grenada's history for a number of Grenadians to deal with. And I've heard this question before: why is it 37 years later some people still can't get over the Grenada Revolution? How would you answer that question?
Well, thank you. That's a really, really important and maybe a very significant question to ask. So I want to start off by saying that I am hoping that our discussion will stay out from as much of the political atmosphere that was associated with the revolution. I don't think I want to talk about whether the revolution was successful, good or bad, either way. What I want us to focus on, or what I'd like to focus on, is to answer the question that you ask and to deal with issues surrounding that question.
Agreed.
Why is it that after 37 years that a government and or a system that ruled Grenada after the demise of the revolution, why is it that after 37 years there is still so much vivid memories and prolonged discussion and painful experiences of the revolution? And so I want to start by saying that there's no question that when you talk to people, old and young, but very much so persons in the middle age who were part of the revolutionary process, who were witnesses to the activities of the revolution, and who were affected directly and or indirectly by the revolutionary process. If you talk to them, and when you talk to them, there is this passion, there is this pathos, there is still those questions, and then there is the expression of hurt and dismay of what happened and what transpired on October 19th. And so I want to lend a voice this morning to acknowledge that people really do have the reason and the need to express, but it all ties up to what we refer to in psychological circles as trauma. Okay, there is no debate that the revolution and the revolutionary process in Grenada during the period of 79 to 83 made an indelible impression on the lives of everyone, not just in Grenada, but all in the Caribbean and in the wider world. The revolutionary process and the revolution of itself made an indelible impression upon people. And so in the Grenadian context, you think of it as a loss for those who were looking for political relief, uh, who were looking for another direction in the life of the political landscape of Grenada. They saw the revolution as a breath of fresh air. Young leaders, vibrant leaders, in their 20s and early 30s took on the leadership of Grenada. And so people gravitated. And so because they felt that this was their thing, they wanted to be part of that process. And so when the end came, you have to understand that the end did not come in a slow process. It seemed as though we went to bed and then we woke up to the demise of the revolution. And so this is abrupt and this is sudden, and not many people can deal with this sudden and abrupt trauma. We can prepare for, if we see it in the long term, we kind of start getting our mind and our psyche ready and prepared to deal with the finality of the situation. But for us, many of us, there were small signs that things weren't all that. And then we woke up within 2 days, this thing is over. And maybe you were not born yet, but I was a mere teenager when in the day of the revolution. And when the demise of the revolution came, I was not in Grenada. I was off to university, but I was still really, just getting out of my teens when that happened. And so let's zero in on a few things about the revolution. The revolution brought hope to many. That is significant. For people who are yearning for a change in perspective, a change in direction, a change in their life, when they get it, to take it away suddenly, it is a loss. And that is what I think Grenadians have not, and many people have not come to grips with. It is the loss. So you will hear me talk about the loss throughout this discussion, because I want you to understand that. So for those who had a new hope, they lost it. For people who were able to be given the opportunity now to thrive in a different area. When you think of some of the gains of the revolution during that time, you had the increase in education, with a lot of scholarships being offered to Cuba and throughout Europe and the rest of the world. You had things like the Center for Popular Education, where young people were going into centers and learning. The older folk were thriving on being able to, starting to learn to read and write. When you take away all of that new and that fresh breath of survival and life, you take it away suddenly, there is a corresponding loss. So I want us to look at what the loss meant and continues to mean to Grenadian. And then, Blossom, I want to quickly add the loss of human life. So we lost the hope that we thought, we lost the vision that we were now getting accustomed to. We lost the new thrust in education, the new thrust in agriculture, the new thrust in a political system. We lost that. But compounded to all of those losses, we had the loss of human life. And of course, we're going to talk a little more about what the loss of human life meant. But for many, whereas many remember the revolutionary process very fondly, and for them, it is a significant loss, there were several who were hurt by the revolutionary process. And as a result, they have sort of anger that is associated with the memory of the revolution. So even that in and of itself is a traumatic experience for many. Many still bear the scars of being incarcerated or being imprisoned. I mean, that so many people were imprisoned, so many people saw their freedom or taken away, their rights taken away and violated unwantedly. And so for them, they still have that anger and that traumatic reaction that is still not yet resolved. So whereas you have people who really loved the revolution and wanted all of its programs to continue, there are those who are so hurt by what was happening that they continue to carry the scars, and not just the emotional scars, but the physical scars. They were, I was born and raised in Tivoli. Tivoli was probably part of the center of the revolutionary process. And even today, some of the guys that I mingle with have the physical and emotional scars coming from the revolutionary process. And for many, it is going to take a lifetime to get over. And I am going now to introduce, what we talk about, what we refer to as post-traumatic stress. Post-traumatic stress is a mental health disorder, and very often, for someone to be diagnosed with a mental or emotional challenge of post-traumatic stress disorder, they must have symptoms after the event from 1 month. So 1 month after the event, if you start to have reaction or symptoms of adversity towards the event, we start to think, okay, maybe that is a sign of post-traumatic stress disorder. But there is no ending period, and that's the point. So 37, you may say, okay, well, Dr. Panchoo, 1 month after the revolution, I could understand people still angry and people still can't sleep when the anniversary comes or the memory comes. But 37 years later, yes, because you see, post-traumatic stress disorder does not have a time limit. So it could be, for some, a lifetime experience. And there is no question that many Grenadians do have and will have a lifetime experience, memory of the revolution and the revolutionary process and the final demise of the revolution.
And there are still 37 years later, there are still people who have not even confronted the pain that they felt. And I'm not just talking physical pain, I'm talking emotional pain as well.
Yeah.
There are people who are yet to face their fears. Just about, maybe it was 2 years ago, I read an article from someone who said he's yet to visit the site of the fort because that's where he was hurt during the revolution. For the people who are yet to deal with this and confront it head on, is that a cause for worry, or is this a natural progression of the trauma?
Okay. Well, I don't know necessarily that it is a cause for worry, unless the trauma that was inflicted upon that person or individuals has or continue to affect their life. Now, if it is continuing today to affect either their work life, their social life, their educational life, their familial life, or life in general, the social life, if it continues to affect them in that way, then there is a cause for concern. But if they have, in many ways, seem to have survived and is living relatively comfortably, then maybe it's not a cause for concern. However, on the other hand, the remembrance and the memories, unless you address it, it will continue. And we probably may not sometimes understand the effects until somebody says something and it jolts the memory and it brings back all of those unhealthy feelings that they have, whether it is that of anxiety, fear, or maybe just not ready to deal with it. Because for someone who was injured on the fort, for example, the discussion you had, but still he is not ready to climb the stairs and to look in the area where he was hurt or where the leaders were slain and brutally murdered. Well, it's the same thing. Was slain. If he or she is still not able to deal with that, it tells you that they are still suffering from the trauma. They are still having a residual negative understanding of the trauma, and they probably need to deal with it. Now, maybe they don't have to, but it will be a good thing for them. So that, because as life continues, the memories of the revolutionary process, the demise of the revolution, are topics that always are going to come to the fore. People are going to talk about it. And unless some people get to deal with, and I can't say overcome, because sometimes trauma is so profound that it really does, it never goes away. The symptoms may subside in depending on what's going on, but the real traumatic response and experience will never go away. For some people, they have lost their parents early in life, and they will go to the dying grave still sobbing when they remember. Okay? And so for some people, they will go to the grave with the memory, whether it's the hurt of the revolution or the grief associated with the demise of the revolution. They'll go to the grave with those memories. And unless we come to grips with it, and it's not an easy task. I'm not saying, okay, overnight you pray about it and then it goes away. No, this is not what I'm saying. I'm saying psychologically, there has to be some form of healing, and it's a progressive healing. It may take more than 37 years. It may take a lifetime. But we, as a people and as a nation, it will serve us better. It will serve us better if we start dealing with those trauma, talking about the trauma, getting professional help for people who are still living in fear and awe about the demise of the revolution.
A significant part of the events of October 19th, 1983 and the aftermath is the fact that most of us do not know what happened to the bodies of Prime Minister Bishop and members of his cabinet.
Yeah.
How much of an impact do you think that has on, one, the soldiers who were part of the revolution, members of the public who went to free him, supporters of the movement? Is that restricting people from, one, having closure, and two, advancing in their recovery from the revolution?
This question, Blossom, might be the most important question that to be asked in terms of the revolution, the demise of the revolution, and trauma related to the revolution. This is probably the most salient question for us to understand, to be asked, and to be dealt with. There is no question that for the thousands of school children and adults and people who went to rescue him, Maurice, Prime Minister then, those hundreds of soldiers who were dedicated to the cause of the revolution and loyal and faithful to Prime Minister Bishop, and for the many supporters worldwide who didn't get a chance to be there on that fateful morning of October 19th. Let me say this here. There is something that knowledge of the final outcome or the end product mean to people. And you are right. Without a body, without knowledge of a resting place for a dead person, there is no finality. And the grieving will continue for many, 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 because they can't put their finger, they can't take a candle. Given our historical and cultural practice in Grenada, we like to know there is a marker, there is a symbol, a point of reference for which Grenadians can go to a loved one. We can, and it's coming up, All Saints coming up now. You know what we do for our beloved people who have passed on. So for the bodies of his cabinet, well, those who perish, and for the leader himself, there is no finality. And because there is no finality, it's like how Americans revere and respect people like Elvis. We think Tupac is probably, hear people say Tupac is still somewhere around, right? That's your generation, people. And then for the older ones, we talk about Elvis probably never died. Because why? For some of them, there was not a lot of finality, being able to touch and feel and see. And so for many, many, many Grenadians, it is going to be one of the issues, burning issues, now, in the past, and continuing in the future.
Let's take a break, Dr. Panchoo, and then we're going to come back. The phones have been ringing as well. This is To the Point. We're speaking the psychological effect of the Grenada Revolution 37 years later. We're going to take a break and then come back.
No, that's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver, indicating that you want to cross. And only when the vehicle comes to a complete stop, you quickly cross to the other side.
Stop, look, hand out, eye contact. Wait for pedestrian to cross to the other side, then you happily continue on your journey. This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Going beyond the ordinary. Examining the stories beyond what meets the eyes. GBN gets to the meat of the matter. Join us on GBN Television, Classic Radio, gbn.gd, or on Facebook via your smartphones and other devices. We take you beyond the headlines every Monday night at 8:30 p.m. We are GBN, rated number 1.
Protect yourself and our community from COVID-19. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not available, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer with at least 70% alcohol. Use
Welcome back to The Point for Monday, October 19th, 2020. We are talking the psychological effect of the Grenada Revolution 37 years later. At this point, let us go to the phone lines, 435-2041. That's the landline number. You can also WhatsApp us on that number. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. You can also post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on Facebook and YouTube. Our first caller. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, my sister Blossom.
Morning, Ms. Jacob. How you do?
Oh, God. Girl, if you know how I cry already, eh? Oh, God, my heart burning. If you know how I cry already, my heart burning. Good morning to my brother on your side.
Good morning, Ms. Jacobs.
That day, the 19th of October. The 19th of October was nice, Sister Blossom. It was nice, Sister Blossom. Lord have mercy. That is the 19th. I tell you about now. A little earlier than now, so. And a friend down the road, they called me later. She dead and gone already. He had 2 twins, little and big. And she said she had to get somebody to hold those twins. Lord have mercy. Ah, boy. Well, here we get the person to hold those twins. Yes, I come up. I get ready. When I close in the room door, I open the room door to come out in the passage. Lord, I come out in the passage. One person. Where you going? Where you going? I said, Lord, I look in the room, is not my aunt. I look in the dining room, is not my aunt. Man, I say, nobody just stopping me. Nobody at all. But when I open the front door, I say, nobody do stopping you. Sister Blossom, answer that angel. Say, where you going? Where you going? Where you going? As if they have a music in my head. Sister Blossom, I just take myself. Take out the shoes. It's about 8:30 And I drop asleep, I don't know when. My aunt don't wake me, nobody don't wake me.
And that probably helped you.
And that, you know something, when 3 o'clock I get up. Oh, God. They tell me, Bishop, I'd have grabbed me and Bishop would have dead together. I'd have grabbed him. They'd have killed me and Bishop together. I'm telling you.
Well, that nap saved you.
I did love Bishop. Bishop was a nice fella. But he had some dirtiness behind him. This ain't good. I'm telling all you.
Thank you, Miss Jacob. Thank you.
You and your brother have a wonderful day, babies.
Thank you very much, Miss Jacob. Thank you so much. And Dr. Panchoo, that's some of the recollection you will hear from members of the public.
Yes. So it's really poetic the way she said it, and I know she's saying it with a lot of passion, and so Blossom, this is part of what we have to deal with and what we have to remember. So when you ask the question, why? 37 years later, but could it be that people they don't know? Yes, we don't know because this is the voice of someone who loved the process, but also loved the prime minister, who loved him, and there were thousands of Grenadians of us who really looked up to him. We loved him. We liked him. We would sit and listen to his speeches for hours without being bored. His disposition, just who he was as a person. So when you hear people expressing themselves in this way, know that this thing is fresh. This thing is fresh from Miss Jacob. And so it is for thousands of others. They want to touch him. They want to be there. They wish they were able to protect him. You understand? Listen, can you imagine? And I have not even spoken to anyone who rescued or who was part of the rescue team or the rescue efforts. But think of those who left their home with all of the chance, Blossom. I'm making it a little vivid now because that's how it is. And driving and walking and on the backs of trucks to go to his residence and to put him on their shoulder. And half an hour later, after that rescue, he's dead. Can you see how people can say, boy, did I contribute to this man's demise? And they have to live with that. This is another aspect of it. And so it's really hard for Grenadians to just come to grips and say, this is part of our history. We don't want to remember. We don't have to deal with it. It will never be like that.
Before I ask the Facebook question, Cassie, I'll get to your question shortly. But there has been requests, suggestions from members of the public that the Grenada Revolution should be taught in schools.
Yes.
And that idea came to mind as you're saying there are people who prefer not to talk about the revolution, but there are people who say and teach it to our children. Which direction you think would be better to deal with the post-revolution?
I think there is no question that making it or including it as part of our historical context, when we teach history, or when we teach, in fact, when we teach politics and government or social studies, even just basic social studies in the in our primary school, I think some, the historians and the people who like to write, and the sociologists, I was just listening to Dr. Grenade on a program yesterday. I think it was Kellen's program. So the point here is that for people who have the flair for writing and doing text books and stuff, I think a pertinent piece of our history should be taught in schools in Grenada. I think if we start making it part of the readily available fabric of our society, we have the Maurice Bishop International Airport. We had to fight a lot for it, and we got it. And so this is a symbol of his leadership, I think, for Grenada. But I think more could be done. It's a slow process. Because very often in political circles, and we're not making this about politics by any means, you hear it referred to as people who are for survivors of the revolution. You hear people still talk about the revolutionary boys and all of that, in terms of the leadership of political stuff. And as though this is a really bad thing. It's a really bad thing. But there were so many of us who were directly affiliated to the revolution and the ideas and the ideals and the programs of the revolution that the memory of the loss will continue to linger for us. Because, for example, in my case, Blossom, I was a young teacher, barely in my just late teens, and in addition to teaching elementary school, I was the coordinator for the Center for Popular Education in my constituent, my area, and I had just left to go to the University of the Southern Caribbean. Then it was called Caribbean Union College, to study, and I left in September of '83. And 1 month later, I left on the 19th of September, and on the 19th of October, I woke up to the fact that the leadership of Grenada was slain. That's what the news I woke up to in Trinidad. So I'm saying to you, I did not even get to be part of that process. And so for me, the memory is still fresh, and it continues to linger, and there are many questions that have been unresolved for me. Why and how? And many people have written about it, but you still can't get that finality that the human psyche yearns for.
Earlier in the program, you spoke about signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and someone is asking you if you can name a few of the 17 signs of PTSD.
When we talk about PTSD, there are so many symptoms and signs that you look for in order for you to determine whether or not someone has PTSD. One of them, there are clusters of signs. So we talk about flashback memories. So if you start, for example, for people who were directly involved, let's say who witnessed the shooting, if they have memories of gunfire and flashback of blood, then that's if that is keeping them awake, if that is having them fearful and sweaty, or it has them not falling asleep or waking up from their sleep, that's a cluster of signs affiliated to post-traumatic stress. Then you also have signs that relate to becoming easily startled. So if you are probably driving in your car, walking down the street, and you are fearful, for that person, I believe, for the person who says, boy, I have not been on the fort, it could be that that one of the signs that they are exhibiting is fear, or what we call avoidance of the situation. So you have flashback, you have been easily frightened or startled, you have avoidance of situations. Okay? A person who has, in a relationship, let's say a romantic or marriage, who suffered abuse, etc., that abuse or trauma that that was inflicted upon them may cause them to never want to fall in love or be in a relationship again. We call that avoidance. So you're avoiding, you're taking precautionary, whether it's emotionally and or literally. And then you have things like intrusive thoughts. You might just be there and all of a sudden you are overwhelmed with thoughts and you may start crying. That's a sign of post-traumatic stress. And so there are several clusters of that.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller.
Morning, greetings, Blossom.
Greetings.
And greetings to Dr. Panchoo. Special greetings to you.
Good morning, good morning.
This day in our life is a special day, we have to say. You know, it might be tearing apart in our heart, but still we have to accept it as the making of our nation. What have happened on that day, March 19th, was a dreadful thing to us as Grenadians and to the world, because we see it happen in many other countries. Sometimes we own people fall for the bait and have that burden to bear just because of other people's affair. We had a chance to bring ourselves out from the colonial masters' grip. That was our opportunity to escape what we are going through today.
Yeah.
But we never really take our history, our leaders never take history serious and realize from whence we came and what the journey we came through, our foreparents, our ancestors came through to be, that we could be this day. What happened is a lesson. And by that, we should know now where we're going, who is our friend, who is there to help us, who is the ones who infiltrate us, who is the ones who spearhead all the action that create that conflict and confusion among our people today. Those are the questions we have to ask, because a lot of people have in the heart and they never come forward to say, and people of great interest, we should look forward for them to come forward and give their part of what happened. But let's console ourselves and use it that our children could benefit from it, not to carry out the actions that, because it's not our children wanted to carry out, or we wanted to carry out such action against our people. But when you've been manipulated by powers that is more voicious than you and powerful than you, and fear is one of the greatest defeat to our people today. But let's pull ourselves together, and Dr. Panchoo, help our people to put in mind, because the mind, you see, we lost that part of it. We let it be stole away. Please help them to get it back. Thank you. Bless love.
Thank you, caller. Doc?
Yeah, thank you, caller. That's, well said. Well said. Because when you think of trauma and post-traumatic stress and people carrying on with their life, sometimes people carry on with their life as a coping mechanism. Oh boy, I need to. They feel that I need to show people that I'm over this. I need to carry on with my life. Yes, we actually need to carry on with our life after a trauma. But when the trauma is part of the fabric of who we are, part of our being, then it adds to the prolonging of the trauma without dealing with it. And it is hard. It is really, really hard work for people to come to grips with it. You asked the question, is teaching it in school, would teaching it in school bring relief? And I say yes, but it's a very slow process. You ask any professional who deals with post-traumatic stress or stress reaction from whatever disaster, whether it is death or natural or man-made disasters, whatever it is, they will tell you that working with people to overcome their traumatic past is a very lengthy and it's a very tedious process. And so the demise of the revolution did not just affect, a handful of people. If it's a family, then you sit and you work with the family and you help them to go through the grieving process. Because this is what it is, Brassam, really and truly. The demise of the revolution has brought what is called grief. And when those of us who study grief and grieving and how to deal with it, when you study it, you understand how difficult it is to help people to overcome their grieving.
Let's go back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller. Good morning. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Blossom. Just 1 minute. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Are you there?
I'm hearing you very far.
Yeah, just a moment. Yes. Are you hearing me better now?
That's better. Yes, go ahead.
Right. And good morning to you, Dr. Panchoo. Dr.
Good morning, good morning.
Part of this discourse, you mentioned a lot about the loss. And it's quite correct. And there is one particular loss that we seem not to be aware of as a people. The loss of civic consciousness. That part of us that makes us proud of our country and desirous of working for and caring about our country. We lost that. And it happened on both sides of the fence. Some people who, as we mentioned, had negative experiences. They swore never again will they ever get involved in anything that has to do with nation building or any of those sorts of things.
Mr. Bernard, sorry to interrupt, but we're hearing a lot of noise. I don't know if you're in a fan or a breeze, but it's...
Yeah. Sorry about
that's
that.
better. No problem. Go ahead.
Yeah. So these people have had a bad experience. And they said, you see me, this thing called government and nation building and doing all those things, we're not getting involved in politics again at all. So they have gotten to the other extreme. They don't want to hear anything about politics or government or anything of that sort. There are some other people who benefited from the revolution. He spoke of those who had scholarships and they went to Africa and Cuba. They came back as doctors and engineers. These people too felt, oh, I've now got an opportunity that I would have never had before. I never thought I'll be a doctor or somebody who's that qualified. I've now an opportunity to make something out of my life that was not there before the revolution. So these people now have become very much inward-looking and selfish. So they focus now about building themselves, capitalizing on the start they got, ensuring that their family coming after them benefited. So we have two sets of folks. Both of them are ignoring the country. Those who had a bitter experience and those who benefited. So we have a country now, 37 years after, nobody looks after it. Everybody looks after himself for one reason or the other, of the two that I gave. So people have become very transactional. They don't care. And the politicians have capitalized on that transactional nature of our people. So this is a major loss that does not seem to be addressed. The loss of civic mindedness. I don't know how we're going to address it, but it's a major one and it affects 100% of our population. I don't know if Dr. Panchoo has to comment on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Doc?
Absolutely, absolutely. Listen, Blossom. I often say that I think Grenada, I believe there is a higher power, someone more in charge, more smarter than all of us put together, who is responsible for life. You know, some people call him God, and you know, we talk about. But what I'm saying is that I believe Grenada was blessed by that all-overseeing eyes and power to get a taste of what civic consciousness could be, what productivity could be, what leadership in government could be through the 4 years of the revolution. And I agree with the caller. There is no question that during that period, voluntarism, civic mindedness, involvement were priority for people. And they were, you saw masses attend not just rallies. Rallies are a good place to meet friends and socialize, but when it was cleanup campaign, when it was beautification of your community, when it was tree planting, whatever it is, when the leadership during the revolution called for mass participation. I mean, there was a minister for mobilization. So when there was the call for participation and consciousness, people came out in droves. And I agree with him to the extent that I think many people have lost that consciousness. And there is no question, because people have lost that consciousness of civic mindedness, that those who benefited greatly from the revolution, some of them, I don't want to call names, but I've had many acquaintances and friends who benefited immensely from the revolution, and in terms of educational opportunities, and they have come back, and many of them are continuing to serve. I mean, I could look at my good friends right now who continue to serve here in Grenada because of that civic-minded consciousness. So in some of what he's saying, yes, there is no question that some came back and all it is just about them, whereas there are many, many who have lost that civic consciousness, and they're saying, you know what, I have been beaten. They say, once beaten, twice shy. If I have been, so I have received, traumatized by the experience, and so no more for me. And, but that's a very good point.
What would you say to the people who possibly don't know how to recover, how to get over the trauma, how to move forward, even 37 years later?
That's a in psychological circles, it's not a difficult question to answer, but I have to be realistic, because you can't necessarily treat an entire population. You have to do it through education on a massive way, through mass media, whether it is through what we're doing now, through other television programs, or through our weekly newspaper, the media, the print. But it calls for educating our people about trauma and about understanding the symptoms that you're experiencing and associating it with maladjustment or to the trauma itself. So it is a difficult prospect. However, it's not totally undaunting, because many people are making themselves available to learn and to understand why was I so attached, and even if I was attached, why do I have this lingering negative response to anything about the revolution? For some people, they get explosive if you talk about Maurice Bishop's name. There was a resistance to the naming of the airport because people were hurt by the revolutionary government. And they have right to that feeling. There's no question about it. Whereas there are many people who appreciate it and were happy for it. And so you have people who are still not there yet. I think, Blossom, one of the greatest disservice to the people of Grenada and the consciousness and the whole traumatic experience is that of not being able to lay a hold of the final remains of the Prime Minister and his cabinet and all those who suffered on the fort. I think if we were exposed to or granted the opportunity and the privilege to have the remains of the body and to put it in a place where we can visit and we can talk in our own cultural way, and add finality to it, I think it is going to solve a whole lot of other problems.
I agree. Dr. Panchoo, thank you very much for being our guest this morning and shedding some light on some issues related to this very important and significant day in Grenada's history. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Blossom, and thank you, listeners. And 37 years later, today is October 19th. It's for many, it's going to be a really rough day, and for others who don't know a whole lot, as you learn about the struggles and the gains of the revolution, but so much so the trauma of what took place on the morning of October 19th, 37 years ago. I wish you all the best. I hope that some of us can find a little peace today amidst the chaos of this experience. Thank you for having me, and have a blessed day.
Thank you, and you do the same.
Okay.
All right. Clinical
Bye-bye.
psychologist Dr. Augustine Panchoo speaking with us today as we commemorate and recognize the 37th anniversary since the massacre at the fort that claimed the life of Maurice Bishop, cabinet members, and scores of Grenadians. This is a significant day. Do what you need to commemorate it. Those of you who want to stay as far from the memory as possible. Those of you who want to continue to remember the significant day in Grenada's history. However you choose to celebrate and commemorate the day, may it be a productive one for you. That's the end of my time today. I'll be back with you tomorrow morning, God willing. Have yourselves a safe, productive Monday. Joseph is back, and he's up next with Mid-Morning Buzz. Bye-bye, everybody.